Welcome to episode 5 of the tutorial series Livewire from scratch. My name is William Juma. The code for each tutorial is in my GitHub repository. Link in the description. In this episode, we are going to look at form data validation. In our previous video, we looked at, among other things, the rule attribute. In this episode, we will look at other ways in which we can be able to validate form inputs. And I would like us to begin talking about the rule attribute because we actually used it in the previous tutorial to validate form inputs. If you did not have a look at the previous tutorial video, you can be able to check video 4. But I would like to take you to the code that we had. So inside our register user.php, we imported the rule attribute. And then we went ahead to state the rules. And as you can see, we are using attributes to just place the rule above whatever it is that you're validating. So above the name, we are validating the name. Above the email, validating the email. Above the password, we are validating the password. I would like to just modify the attribute name and use a custom attribute just as a way of explaining something that we can be able to do as a variation to whatever it is that we had here. Obviously, in our form, we have this one called name, email, and password. If we attempt to submit, as you can see, the first option is saying the name field is required. Sometimes you find that whatever it is that you have in your form, for example, you have first underscore name. So in this case, if that is what is displayed in your form, or in other words, the input that you will be having in your form in the wire model, in this case, that first underscore name is what will be displayed. And in this case, that will not look good. So for example, if what we have here was something like first underscore name, first underscore name, like that. Obviously, we will need our attribute, our property in our register user to be having a similar name. So probably this should be called first underscore name. Let me just paste. If there's something, there's nothing, so let me just type it in. So first underscore name, like that. So now if you attempt to submit, the validation error that is going to be shown was supposed to be first underscore name, but in this case I think the underscore has been removed, and I think that is a good thing. But another example would be for date of birth. For example, you have written it DOB. In this case, if that is what we are having here, DOB, let us assume that is a field for the date of birth. Then also in our register user, we have DOB. In this case, we will have a problem. When we attempt to submit, now it will tell us DOB field is required. And in this case, it might have some unnecessary challenges in this case. So let me just modify and return everything to name and save, and also change this one and call it name. Now, if we want to give a variation of whatever it is that we want, here where we have the rule, we can be able to state what or how we want the message to be formatted. So in this case, how our attribute, the attribute name, should be stated. So for example, we can say as, name as, we can say maybe new user name, for example. Now, if we attempt to submit without typing in the name, we will get a validation error that the new username field is required. In one way or another, we will be able to have modified our error message. It is also possible for us to provide an entirely custom error message that is different from the usual Laravel error messages. So for example, this one you just see email field required. So in this case, if we want to do something custom for the email, probably we can be able to pass a message. But I would like to still just use this same one that we have here. So instead of having as new username, I would like to say the error message like that. And now I can be able to type inside here the name, or in other words, your name is required, like that. I save that. If I attempt now to submit, now you can see your name is required. So that is how we can be able to customize our error messages. But this is our first method of validation, which is an extension of what we did in our previous tutorial, and it is the rule attribute. I want us to look at a different way in which we can be able to validate our form, in other words, errors. So in this case, we can be able to go ahead and uncomment everything regarding the rule attribute. So I will uncomment this one. I will comment it out and comment out that one also. And even the password, I'm going to comment it out. The second method in which we can be able to validate, now I will also comment this one out temporarily. The second method, we can just be able to say validated, and then so this one we're just storing whatever it is that we're having inside this variable. So instead of even having that, I can just say this validate. So in this case, we can say this validate like that, and then we can be able to have our array of validation. So I can say name double arrow required like that, and then a comma. I can be able to copy this one and do validation for email. We can say it's required. We can also say unique for the table users, and then we can also say it has to be an email like that. And lastly, we can do a validation for the password, and then we can just have it as required, and probably a minimum of 7 characters, for example. So once we have it like that, we can be able to close this with a semicolon. Also, this one will be able to do our validation. I would like to attempt and see if it works. So you click there, and you can see it's being still validated. I can even refresh and attempt to click on it. You can see it's still working. So it is very okay for you to validate in this fashion. I would like us to look at another method in which we can be able to validate. And in this case, we can be able to validate by defining custom rules. In other words, a rule method in our Livewire class. So allow me to comment this one out. So I'm going to comment everything that I have, just to put it in here right now, like that. And then, of course, we can be able to use that other method. And I would like to have another function. So we have the function for saving. Maybe we can have it above here. So we are going to call it public function rules, like that. And inside here, we are going to have our rules. So basically we will have the curly braces, and then inside here we can be able to return, and we can have our array of values. And so what we are going to say, again in a similar fashion, name required. Sorry, this one has to be in yes, like that. Name required. Email required. And of course I will add something to email. Password required. And we can say minimum 7 characters. For the email, we can be able to check that it is unique for the table called users, and we can also set it to be a unique, to be an email, nothing else. So we force our users to ensure they have typed in a valid email address. So basically we can be able to close that. I would like to refresh this and attempt and see if we'll be able to have validation errors. We are having 1, 2, 3, meaning there is something that I have not done. After declaring the rules, you're supposed to sort of like use the rules. In other words, use this validate. So once we use it, then we'll be able to have the validation error. So let me refresh again and attempt to submit. Lovely. Now you can see our errors are still being displayed. I want us to look at the last method in which we can be able to also do custom validation. And so for us to use the last method, I would like to go ahead and comment this one out such that we won't be using this one. So let me just comment it out in that fashion, like that. So our last method in which we can be able to do validation, we will be able to import the validator. So in this case, our Laravel validator facade. So here we can say use illuminate facades support facades validator, like that. And once we have imported it, we can be able to go ahead and use it. So for us to be able to work with it, we can validate in this format. We will actually be able to do our validation inside our save function again. So inside here, we can be able to say validated, somehow just saving our data inside this variable, and then we can say validator make. As you can see, this is purely Laravel, and then inside here we can have an array of values, but we will be having each one of them individually. So we want first of all to have what we are validating. So in this case is the data that we are validating, data that we are validating. Obviously, as you can see, we have name, and the name we can actually say that obviously, for us to be able to access values, the properties that we have set above here, we usually use this. So this name, sort of like to say that is exactly what we are looking at. And then email, we can have this email, and then password we can have, this password like that. And after that, now then we can be able to go ahead and now put down our validation rules. So this one is just declaration of what we are validating. So then here we can still have an array of values, and you have a comma in between here after the first square brackets, and inside here now we can be able to put now the validation. So we can say validation for name property, or the name attribute, we can say it's required, and then the email, we can say that it is required, and then it has to be unique for the table users. So in other words, nobody else should have an email similar to the one that is in existence in the database. And then obviously we want it to be a valid email address. Finally, for password, we can say that the password is required. Maybe we can be able to say a minimum of maybe 7 characters. And then finally, we can be able now to sort of like format the message in which, the message which will be passed to our users. So in this case, we can just say when we have required, the message that should be provided is the, in this case, attribute. So in this case, we can say the name or the email or the password, and then we can say field is required. Obviously, you can be able to type in whichever way you want it to be. So after that, we can chain validate like that. And then now this will be able to do our validation. So I would like to refresh again, and I have saved the changes that we have made here. Now if maybe I can just extend such that you're able to view everything that I have here. I've been able to condense it a little bit, so validator make all that up until here. I want us to attempt and see if we will get the errors, and we will be having an issue because it seems as if there's something that we are still having. Let me see. So eliminate support facades. Validator make name, this name, email, this email, password, this password, and then name is required, email is required, and so on and so forth. The attribute, even that one I think is okay. Let me save and try again. I do not know why we are having issues. It says missing rules rule property on Livewire. So let me check again. Oh, I need to remove this. There's something that every other thing is okay. The challenge is that I have this validate. This is the reason why I'm having that error. So let me refresh again and attempt to submit. Now you can see still the validation is being done. And even if I attempt to type something and attempt to submit again, the password, you tell me now this seven characters. If I type something in the email and attempt to submit, of course because we have set it to be required, it's saying we need to have an at. If I attempt to submit that, still we are having the password as a problem, and the name is also required. Of course, the email is checked because now it seems it is a valid email according to our validation. Basically, that is that. There are several things that I have left out. I think like 2 things, but in sort of like a validation of arrays, that one we'll be able to do once I have a meaningful example that we can be able to use. And then on top of that, there is another sort of validation method whereby we use the boot method, and that one I will not be able to talk about it in this tutorial episode. But this means we have reached the end of the tutorial episode. Please subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell. By doing this, you'll be notified when I upload another awesome video. If you like the video, you can give it a thumbs up, you can share it. You are also welcome to share, to engage in the comment section and tell me what you feel.